The
So
thing.
I'd
Any
like
other announcements? Yes, yes,
I'd like
Marcia.
to just make announcement to David. David, this is Marsha Weiner. I have some place that I think you would like to go. In Tubac at the art museum there, they're having something all about space and art and interpretation of the stars. And they have two artists who are marvelous. I know them, who have curated it. It's a regional show. It's not just Tubac. And the woman who is it's a couple, this woman is just marvelous. She's been my instructor, and she's created a whole room there for you to move into. Okay? So that I would forget it since we haven't started, I just wanted to let you know. And everybody else who likes the stars in the sky, try to get down there to Tubac, to the Arts Center. Thank you.
thank you so
Advertisement.
much, Marcia. Okay, I really
Thank you,
appreciate that.
Marcia.
I'll
Okay.
probably not be able to go for a while, but I'll
But it's a
certainly check it
month,
out.
but get just to find out the dates and the time. It's this month.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Marcia.
You're welcome.
Okay, maybe I should do my little quote right now before
Yes,
we get
please,
started.
David.
Okay, I have two short quotes today. One is from John Milton's Areopagitica in 1644, and he writes, when he was visiting Italy after he graduated from his undergraduate degree, he said, "There it was that I found and visited the famous Galileo, grown old, a prisoner to the Inquisition for thinking in astronomy otherwise than the Franciscan and Dominican licensers of thought." And the other one is from Abraham Payas, and he was reflecting on Einstein's discovery that the perihelion precession of the orbit of Mercury could be explained through his theory of general relativity. And this is what he says: "This discovery was, I believe, by far the strongest emotional experience in Einstein's scientific life, perhaps in all his life. Nature had spoken to him." Thank you.
Thank you, David. Very, very well done. I'm going to ask Sue if she would read the opening prayer in English.
Okay. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotov, v'tivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe. You have sanctified us through your commandments and commanded us to busy ourselves in things of Torah.
Amen.
Thank you. Well, we are in the midst of Joseph's travail in Egypt. And I think last time we spoke a little bit about Potiphar, and we spoke about Joseph's rise to, I'm going to use the word stardom. He's not only influential, but he has been described in Torah as well-built and handsome. I am not aware of anyone else being described such physical characteristics in the Torah.
They usually describe or frequently describe the women as being beautiful.
Yes, but I just found that of some curiosity. So, we finished verse. We are in Genesis. We are in chapter 39. And we're going to start on verse 7. So if somebody would care to read, David, I know you always have your hand up, so please.
So do I. Yeah.
And Ricky does. Okay. Ricky,
Okay,
you'll be
and-
second to read.
Okay. And it came to pass after these things that his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph, and she said, lie with me. But he refused and said unto his master's wife, behold, my master, I must tell the truth. No. Behold, my master, having me, knoweth not what is in the home, and he hath put all that he hath under my hand. He is not greater in this house than I, neither hath he kept back anything from me but thee, because thou art his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? And it came to pass, as she spoke to Joseph day by day, that he hearkened not unto her to lie by her or to be with her. And it came
Okay,
to
let's
pass.
stop at that point. Any comments or questions? Well, does anything stand out in this? Now, yes, Don.
Yeah, I had a question from last week when I mistakenly thought we were on this passage. And that is, what are Joseph's motivations here? Because he has an allegiance to his boss, which seems to be the main reason he's resisting the temptation, but he also invokes God. And I'm not quite sure where the division of loyalty lies there. If anyone has any help, appreciate it.
Okay. Anyone want to answer Don's question? Well, Joseph has been in a lot of pits before. Yes, and the pits, as we discussed, they sort of change his character. And he's a little more aware of things. At this point, we are told that he's now separated from family. Put yourself into the mind of somebody separated from family. You know these brothers did this. You know your brothers did this to you and got you here. Indirectly, they didn't know that this was going to be the outcome. But at the same time, when you're separated from family, who do you tend to miss? Or do you just disregard any memories? Do you miss your parents? Do you miss your brothers? Or other siblings? Do you miss your children? If you're living here and the family is elsewhere. Yes, Michael.
You would tend to miss when you're separated. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. When it depends how long you have been with them before you were separated, and you would, in my mind, you would tend to miss the people within your family who you spent most time with, or had more interaction with.
Okay. All right. Yes. But I think that's very important. And I know I know Grace feels the same way. And I think David is raising his hand, but I think it's for Wendy because she disappeared from her screen.
Well, I totally agree with Marty, except I think he would miss the people like I hate to bring this back to current day with George Floyd. As he was dying, who did he call out for? His mother. And that's probably who Joseph, if he was missing anybody, was missing the most. You miss your mom. And that's basically there. But his master's wife propositioning him with having so much respect for his mother, it was probably just a major turnoff to start with, because I didn't think wives would be doing the propositioning in a chauvinistic society. Sorry for saying that, man, but it was.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I think this is very important. I know Michael had his hand up again. Michael, you raised the question initially. Did Gail, what about what you wanted to say? And then I'm going to go back to Michael.
Well, I just wanted to say, I don't think he'd be missing his brothers after what they
Right.
did to him. You know,
Right.
he might miss his father or something, but certainly not his brothers. When
Okay.
a family member mistreats you, I don't think you're going to miss them very much.
Okay. Michael, you had your hand up before, and then Helene.
No, I gave my answer already.
Oh, okay. All right. So Helene.
We are such individuals. There's no way we would know who we would miss, but there may have been one of those brothers that he was particularly fond of, a smaller one he bonded with. There's no way that we would know who we missed, but I agree that the mothers, what mother
Yes.
is.
I think you are correct in that. Everyone's correct in that. I'm one of the thing. Let me try to find it away here.
Marty, Grace raised her hand.
Okay, Grace. Yes, thank you, Grace. Yes.
Thank you. Hi. Yeah. I'm going to repeat this from what I've already heard. My instinctive thought was that he would miss as his mother first, but looking at myself, I wouldn't miss my mother because my brother and my dad were my primary influences growing up, period. End of story. And so now I'm reconnecting with the mama side. So we are such individuals. That's what I heard, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, and Ricky, yes.
I would say, that's my first reaction was who would you miss first was based on your age. If you're young, it would be mama. If it was, a little bit later in life, much later in life, it would be your spouse, maybe your favorite kid if it's much later in life. And also, as Grace pointed out, we all have our individual stories with relationships to people. And some of those people, I would probably more miss my father than my mother because my father raised me. But maybe it could be 10 minutes from now, I would miss somebody different. It just depends on where I'm at the moment, what's happening to me, who I would miss most. But I think it depends on your station in life and your age.
Okay. Now, I found it interesting. I haven't heard a lot. Well, there are only a few guys here. And I always say that one of the people that you miss the most are your teachers. And they can be your parents, but they can be other figures as well. It can be your dad. It can be a brother. It can be a sister. It can be a mother. Yes, Michael.
Yeah, that gives me this memory. I had a great affection for my grandparents. And the reason I did that, because both of my parents had to work. And my grandparents did a lot of raising and a lot of teaching for me, especially in my religion, in our religion of Judaism, because my grandfather was a Kohen and he was a very learned man, and I learned a lot from them. And so they were a big influence, as well as my parents. That, of course, I miss them terribly. And the other thing is that I came from a small family, didn't have a large family. And by having a small family, I was attached to everyone because it was small.
Sure. Good point. Good point. Yes, Helene.
Sometimes it's not the family that you miss, Sometimes there's someone in your life, a neighbor, someone at temple, a coach, someone who loves you so much and that you love back so much that you miss them, especially if you didn't have a good family, especially if you had bad feelings, that, as I call those, grand friendships. They are absolutely marvelous in your life. And I just didn't want to ignore that.
Now, yes, Ricky.
Yeah, I was thinking, I still to this day remember the name of my third grade teacher, Giordano. And I really wish I had looked her up when I was, much younger, because right now she's probably long past. But I have no idea what there was about her that I so connected, but I'm so disconnected from my family. And I was boarded out a lot as a kid. And this is when I was boarded out to a family. And so there was that connection. But to this day, just every now and then I'll say, oh, I really wish I had looked up Mrs. Giordano, 20 years ago. But I think of her often. So that's a person that no blood, no nothing, but there was just something that kind of brings up Elaine's point. And they say that children that orphans, the whatever, or terribly mistreated, a lot of them only survive because there is a significant female that nurtures them during key times in their life. And so Mrs. Giordano has been that person for me, whatever. So that would be the person, whatever the relationship was, that I still miss.
In the family scenario that you bring up, the mother is the nurturer and also a major teacher. In Judaism especially. And so why is Joseph thinking about God? Where does the teaching come from? Is it from his mother? I mean, Joseph, is it from his mother? Is it from his father, or both? And why is God mentioned here? Last night, the rabbi read. Susan. Oh, Susan, yes.
You're muted. Oh, okay.
No, I got it.
You got it.
I just wanted to say that Rachel really did not raise Joseph because, Joseph, because didn't she die in childbirth? Or was that with Benjamin?
Yeah, yes.
Oh, okay. Or her interaction with Joseph would have been maybe, because he came first. So, and then she had Benjamin. So her interaction with him would not, I'm sure he was a toddler when she died.
So who is he left with?
His dad.
Right.
And then his would you call them stepmothers or?
Okay, you could, the concubines, sure.
and Leah, I mean, she wasn't a concubine.
Right.
So I don't know what you'd call them. But
so he would be turning possibly to his father, to think of his father. And indeed, there is a midrash that he is remembering the teachings of his father, and he does not want to betray his father. And his father has taught him about God. Last night, the rabbi didn't read the English version of the V'ahavta prayer. But what are we supposed to do for our children?
Teach them.
Teach them what?
Well, teach them about how we got out of Egypt. So it's just, but
every Sabbath we say it.
I know. I was just gonna say I can almost hear it, but
the mitzvot. Yeah. And we're to teach them diligently to our children. Okay. Yes, David.
Yeah, when I was a child, I once asked my father if our rabbi kept a list of how many times each of us goes to shul. And he immediately looked at me. He said, "No, he does not. I promise you, he does not. What he does do, if he keeps a list of all at all, it is a list of the kinds of life we are each leading. The kind of life you lead is so much more important than how often you go to shul."
Very good point.
While I have the floor, here is my better half.
I just wanted to respond to what Ricky said about her teacher, and she didn't understand why she felt so close to her. Ricky, I was a teacher, and fortunately, I did not teach in a classroom. And because I taught in a gymnasium, I had kids all over me, not with any desks in between us. And what would start to happen is they would build a closeness because now I was literally part of the group, not the leader of the group. And on off times, if I was in my office, kids would come in and just sit down and talk with me. From time to time, some would come in and bring their lunches and have lunch with me. So I got to hear a lot of things from a lot of, well, my girls, because those who came into my office, and we got very close. And there are some that I am still in contact with today, and I've been now retired for as long as I taught school. So your teacher was most likely an accepting person. It didn't matter who you were, that you were okay just as you were. And if you asked, she probably had a sympathetic ear.
Why don't you finish this?
Good point. Excellent.
One of the students that you're still, okay. All right, we're done.
Okay. No, that was excellent. Excellent. So teachers can come from different sources. Yes, one of Grace says it's here. He has learned that God, he's ultimately responsible to God
In his dreams.
in his, and before he even talks about anything else, his dreams that he mentions to his brothers, he is attributing to God that it's God-given. And so he has a special relationship also with God. And and maybe it's his belief in God that has gotten him through the pits. And I like to use those terms, all the downturns in his life. Maybe that's going to become the rest of the story too. Remember, in a lot of these stories, when they are converted for TV or the movies, we call them morality plays. Okay, and the Greeks were fond of that, and the Romans. Yeah, okay, Helene, yes.
I believe that 100% that his belief in God was total and did get him through every one of the pits. Because think about it. Think about God forgiving us for being who we are and loving us in spite of who we are. The love of the Father God is pure. And that's what Joseph believed. That's what I think.
I think you're very correct, and I think that would be an excellent précis of the Joseph story. David, yes.
One thing that concerns me about this is that I don't see the woman who wanted Joseph to lie with me, she said, is named, and is named other than his master's wife. And it concerns me that this is part of the accusations that many people, including us, have cast upon Judaism, that it is not a religion that treats women very well. It would have been interesting to know what his master's wife's name was, but I don't see it anywhere.
I do have something to say.
Oh, okay. Yes, Helene.
I wasn't going to say it, but I'm going to say it. Didn't you say that he was described as handsome and big or something like that?
Yes, it's right out of Torah.
Okay.
It was a beautiful form and fair to look upon.
You're right. Women certainly didn't have, at least they weren't acknowledged to have passion. I think she simply got turned down by him. If he was that gorgeous, that handsome, the Torah says he was handsome. So she wanted him. And that's very unusual for a woman to act like that.
That's also describing Charlton Heston in Exodus.
Good one, Michael. Gail and then Ricky.
Yeah, in defense of Judaism, David, most religions or all religions don't treat women very well. I mean, the history of religion in general, and whether it's, Muslim religion, Christianity, whatever, women are always pretty much second rate.
Oh, yeah.
That's the historical fact.
Ricky?
I'm going to take this from her point of view. I think, well, I'm going to be blunt. I think she had balls. She started out, she wanted and she asked for it. She didn't get it, but at least she's a woman who stood up for what she wanted. And hey, there's a good looking dude over there. I want him. Whereas the other way.
That's what I thought.
And I think that
so nobody is thinking of the morality clause. Okay.
Well, it's kind of like
okay, Suzanne, and then I think David had or
it's kind of like the pool boy.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think Joseph was her first rodeo.
Okay.
The Egyptians were kind of a different culture, and her husband had a significant status. So I think there were probably a lot of guys that were afraid of her because of the trouble she could get them into if they did not yield to her. And I just, there is nothing meek or shy about this chick. So, and I personally, it doesn't bother me that her name's not in the Bible. I don't think she deserves to have her name in the Bible.
Oh,
Just me.
That's interesting.
Because it could be any woman.
Right. I mean, she represented evil. So, although Jezebel was named in the Bible.
Yeah. That comes later.
Yeah.
David, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, just a couple of things. I think one thing, the comment that I think Ricky made, I wasn't going to believe it. I was going to argue with her until she punctuated it by pounding her fist on the table. And now I agree with you 100% about everything you say. I just wanted to say that. Well put. The other point, which is a real point here, is that our Judaism has become a lot more encompassing for women. We have women rabbis. We have, even in our Orthodox Shar Shemaim in Montreal, we have women at the very highest positions of the synagogue. So in the modern age, Judaism is changing that way, even in the Orthodox traditions. And I'm really glad to know that.
Good points, David. Sue had her hand up.
I was going to comment to what you said, David, about women's position in Judaism, and Gail really articulated it. Even if you go back to biblical times and you take the writings of that era, you find an astonishing difference in the cultural attitude of Jews to women in comparison to neighboring cultures, which makes it very unusual and unique as a culture. And I have read writings by priests and Christians who applaud Judaism, especially in the area of their treatment of women. So there's a lot of misunderstanding too about how women are regarded in the Jewish faith. And the reason I feel so strongly about addressing it is because it's very often misused as a way of perpetuating anti-Semitism and, the so-called mistreatment of women. I think that's somewhat of a myth. We do have to remember at its inception, they were all old, ancient cultures with ancient attitudes. And considering that, we still are leaps ahead at that time of our treatment of women.
Oh, I can tell you something.
Okay, I know good grief. I don't know who exactly had the hand up first. Michael, I'm going to pick you, then Helene, and then Dawn.
Okay, I wanted to ask David, when he mentioned that there's women taking part now in the Orthodox. And so I wanted to ask you, David, in what manner, in what way are women taking part now in the Orthodox?
Well, in our synagogue, there is a position, an unorthodox position that is open for women that is now being filled by one very competent person in Montreal. I'm really proud to know that.
And what is the position?
It's Wendy, what did you say it was again?
Teacher.
That was the person I was thinking of. It was a woman rabbi, associate rabbi, who actually was part of my mom's shiva that we did, and they really made an impact by being there and assisting with us and sitting shiva with us. But there is a Hebrew expression that I will look up for what describes this person, but it is an honest attempt to increase and help to equalize the participation of women in Judaism. And I think it's very important and a very positive step. And I will pull a Khrushchev on this by taking off my shoe and pounding it on the floor. But I'm not going to do that. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Helene, yes.
I will give you a report about Orthodox women. I have a huge Orthodox family in New York, New Jersey, all over the place. Huge. My female Orthodox cousins, many of them have master's degrees. Many of them have opened bookstores. Many of them, they're extraordinary women. They are they have owned the fact that they can do everything they want to do, but they are still Orthodox women. They follow every single with the wig, and they follow everything, but they have another part of their life, thank you God, that they can be who they are intellectually and emotionally, and I'm very proud of them, so I'm happy to tell you that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes,
Thank
Don.
you so much.
And then Sue. And then Marcia.
I'm still hoping we come back to the question of divided loyalties with Joseph, but just on following this conversation, I have no doubt that Joseph's description as being an attractive male feeds into this scene. I mean, it's a perfect setup. But also when you look at the perspectives of the characters, I mean, the master's wife is clearly someone with appetites, and she wants what she wants. And Joseph, not to be misogynist here, but he obviously hadn't heard the expression, a woman scorned, hell has no fury like a woman scorned. So he was really setting himself up for retaliation here. But he came back, his first instinct was to come back on ethics, morality and ethics. And it was clear that she, it just went, right over her head, because that's not what she was interested in. So it's actually a pretty modern seen, really. I mean, granted that women were property in those days. It's still a fairly modern scene in terms of the emotions involved.
Right.
But I still don't quite get which way, whether Joseph was more worried about his position with his master or with his position with God, or maybe it doesn't matter. I don't know.
Well, it's it's probably all three, but the one that's stated verbatim, it's in quotes, is that he would not want to sin before God. And it's in quotes in the Torah.
Huh, in quotes.
Okay, so it's not just we need to say everything we mentioned is true, but he puts God above all of these arguments.
That's right.
And so that's all I'm going to say on that, because I know other people have had their hands up. And did you and then Marcia, I know, had her hand up too.
Well, I was just going to say something in reference to Don's question. I think it indeed implies that he was considering all of those questions. Yes. And while he may have at that moment worried about how God would look upon it if he got derailed and jumped her bones, on the other side of the coin, he is still at a point in his life where he is self-serving. And in order to advance himself, he wants to walk the straight and narrow and do what favors his master, so to speak. So I think it's a combination of all those. And in reference to David's comment and others about orthodoxy, I think we have to remember today there are three streams of orthodoxy. There's ultra-orthodoxy, Hasidism, and neo-orthodoxy, and they all take somewhat different positions with respect to what women may do. I know of Orthodox rabbis, female rabbis, but they are not of the ultra-Orthodox stream. And so that is why the other streams of Orthodoxy came about, because they wanted to be sure that if indeed a woman wanted a life in study of Torah and teaching, she could then do it in the other streams of Orthodoxy. Right. But I don't believe there's anybody in ultra-Orthodoxy that's a female rabbi.
David has your hand up. Yes. David, we're skipping over Marcia. Yes. And then I'll come back to David. Okay.
Marcia.
I agree with everything you say, Susan, but my understanding, which it isn't written that I can quote it, was that modern Orthodoxy is a whole different thing. And there's also called, different synagogues are called modern Orthodoxy. Yes. But women, and you said you know a woman's rabbi, but women in some of the other Orthodox have been given the position of teacher, of also doing things in an administrative area, and have been accepted by their community in different ways, even though in those communities they are not rabbis, but they have a title, which I don't know what it is, but in aspects, it is a teacher plus.
Yes.
That's nice. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah, yes. Well, first David and then Michael.
Well, thank you. The position, I believe, is Maharat, but the person is Rabbi Raquel Cole Feingold. I think she's Jewish. Anyway, she was the first woman to be ordained as an Orthodox rabbi in Canada. Mm-hmm. And she is the Maharat at the congregation Shara Shemayim. I got to know her pretty well during my mom's Shiva, and really impressed with with what she is bringing to interpretation of modern Orthodox Judaism. It's still the religion that we know and love, but it's changing and adapting to new realities and new principles. And I think that's lovely to see that. I really enjoy seeing that.
Yes, it is good. Yes, Michael.
I think that we have somehow lost the meaning of the word Orthodox because of all of these other sects coming into play. I believe that women have a very, very important part in Judaism. There's no doubt about it. I support that very much. And there's no buts about it. The Orthodox seem to have lost its way along the way because women did not play a part in Orthodox for the reasons which I do not support. I do not support that, but I'm looking at it from a realistic and honest way, from as far as the word Orthodox means. It's kind of playing with the word in some respects.
Okay, very good. Before I lose my train of thought, when David was mentioning everything, and then I'll get back to Helene and Don and Helene. David, several years ago, Sue and I were in Montreal, and we were going to do a tour of Montreal. We were there for a day, and we were hoping to see Montreal. But we did something a little different. We got into a cab, and we negotiated a price with this Jewish cab driver from the local Jewish community in Montreal. And he took us on a tour of Montreal, and we visited such places as this huge open market. And we also visited the university there. And we visited a number of places. We had lunch at a Jewish deli. It was huge. It was a huge kosher deli. And we also had a snack at another place. I don't remember the names of the streets, but the street was right in the heart of the Jewish community. And we had another snack at a coffee shop that was on a traffic circle. But I don't remember the names of the streets. But I noticed that in the Jewish community and on other streets, they had a very religious group of Hasidim who were, they had the fur hats and the long coats and the payas and all of that. Very interesting Jewish community there in Montreal. Yes. So you reminded me of something.
I appreciate you saying that, Marty. And I think Wendy and I have a goal that the next time you two are in Montreal, we would love to take you on another tour of my birthplace. That's a beautiful city. And
We're
I'd
there.
love to do that.
We're there.
Definitely. It's phenomenal. We met a lot of interesting people there. There are different ways of traveling. And one is to break away from the group concept and be on your own. And you learn an awful lot more about the community that way. Yes. Before, I know I sparked an interest from Sue, but what I want to do is get back. And I know Don and Helene, I don't know who had their hand up first. I'm going to let the two of you.
Go ahead, Helene.
Go ahead. Okay, Helene, you go first.
I'm glad, Sue, that you clarified the 3 levels of orthodoxy. Thank you. And I'm just saying now, all of my cousins are, I really think they're all Hasidim, but not all of them walk around with the long you know, but some do, but they are Hasidim. The ones
Right.
I go to are the really deep, deep Orthodox. But the women, wow, they're dynamite.
Yes. Well, they're charged with raising the family and educating them.
Yeah, everything.
That's right.
Everything. They raise
Don,
their-
you had your hand up and then Sue.
They have
Just
hundreds
that quick,
of grandchildren. They have so many grandchildren. They have baby after baby, wedding after wedding. Oh, but that's who they are.
Very good. Yes, Don.
just quick comment. I think if Joseph was as smart as he was honorable, he would have said, you know, you're a beautiful, attractive woman, but I have this medical condition.
Oh, touche.
Oh, that was cute. Yes, Sue. You
Yeah,
were going to say.
I was going to say, when we have a discussion about Orthodox Judaism, it's not that's black and white, number one. Number two, it's the ultra-Orthodox in many ways are analogous to the strict constructionists of the Constitution of the United States. They have a dedication to saying, to be in the mindset, they think, of the people who were the original authors of the Constitution. And by the way, I have no problem with that. It doesn't suit my way of life or thinking, because I like to see the American Constitution and Judaism as an evolving text, because times change, generations change, needs change. And I think the genius in our religion, honestly, is that it is highly adaptable without being disloyal to it. The same way that the Constitution is highly adaptable without being disloyal to it. And the fact that there's a faction of people who feel otherwise is not threatening or ominous to me, because it provides a bit of attention and sharpens your focus. Why do I really insist on thinking this way? If everybody agreed with everybody, it would not only be boring, but there would be little challenge to meet any tasks at hand. The tension is healthy. There's nothing wrong with that. As I said, orthodoxy does not suit my way of life, but I respect it. I respect it because the people who practice it for the most part really feel they're being true to the original text and authors. I can't judge them for that.
Yeah.
I don't hold that against them.
Well, now I'm also reminded of the movie Yentl. Okay, because this subject was brought up in that movie. And but I'd like to get back to the book that we're reading. In a few weeks ago, we covered another story about temptation. The characters are different. From the male perspective, you had somebody who was out looking to be relieved and finds a woman who turns out to be very moralistic. And in this story, we have the opposite. We have a fellow who is being beguiled, but he does not take, I'm sure he was flattered by the attention, but he does not give in to that. And it is the woman who is doing the beguiling and really wants to go further than that. So you have two stories that are that presented from that presents the subject from different standpoints. And we haven't gotten in, we've just touched the surface of the second story, but you have a different way of looking at it. And we can, so I toss that out for discussion at this point. Has anyone noticed that in addition to myself? Yes, David, you're shaking your head.
You're muted.
David, I think you're muted.
I was muted. I'm sorry. I was just using some of the time to express my love for my wife, but the way I do. But I really just wanted to agree with you, Marty, and especially with what your wife was saying. Very brilliant, brilliant comments that she was making. I just wanted to agree with it, and with what you said.
Thank you for saying
Well,
that.
thank you. And, but, you know, here we have two different twists on morality. And it is, in my mind, and I know there have been commentaries also about this, that I'm going to turn my volume down. I hear an echo, that's why I turned it down. One of the issues here is how we look at different circumstances and how we can find ourselves. In one, it takes a woman to put everything back on the right track. But the honor of the individual says, well, yes, the woman is right and I was wrong. And he feels shamed by it. Here, we have a woman who has used her powers. I'm sure he's not the only guy that she's done this with, but whether it was out of fear of consequences or whether or not it's the play of, you know, that he's a moral person, or, you know, we can debate all of these things, but I just think that there's an interesting comparison between the two. And I think that's why the story of Tamar was dropped in where it was. And, you know, it could, if it came much later, you know, if it came after all of this, maybe not so, but you know, in our plotting, we have to remember what we discussed a few weeks back, as opposed to showing the comparisons today. So any other comments on that? Otherwise, we'll go on. Oh, yes, Suzanne. Suzanne, you're muted.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Can you hear?
Yeah.
Oh, I've mentioned this
What's the book?
book before.
It's hard showing it when you're with the background. There you go.
There we go.
The patriarchs. Okay.
Right, from the Dead Sea Scroll.
Right.
And so I was going through it on Joseph's testament. And interestingly enough, he does not mention this Potiphar's wife's name either. And he talks a great deal about her. Apparently, she noticed him in the marketplace, and she wanted him right then. And she sent a couple of her eunuchs to go buy him. The first eunuch wasn't successful. The second one bought him. He told her for 100, whatever that unit was, of gold. And but actually that eunuch paid 80 and he kept 20 for himself. Joseph saw it and didn't say anything because he didn't want the eunuch punished. But he talks about how the wife was constantly pursuing him, that she wanted Joseph to murder her husband, or she was thinking about doing that so then she could marry Joseph.
Okay.
She talked about giving up her idols to be a follower of his God. And Joseph kept talking about how important it was to fast and to pray. And his prayer was to be free of her, and which eventually got answered when he got thrown in prison. But she was obsessed. I mean, you know, if we look at this book, of course, it's not scripture, but it does give more insight into what was going on.
Okay. I know it's not in Torah. That we would call midrash.
Oh,
In other
okay.
words, that these are stories to fill in the missing pieces that's not mentioned in the Torah.
Right.
Okay. So
Yeah.
so what you're quoting is midrash. And that's good. Any other comments that anyone wants to make at this point? We haven't gotten very far. Okay,
Yes,
Rick.
I have.
Oh, okay. Sue has another comment.
Yeah, I just thought of something somewhere. And it might be a quotation from a book by Rabbi Arthur Green. He writes that where there is spare detail in one part of the Torah, in another place there's an abundance of rich detail. And sometimes when they omit certain facts, it's because it's considered a factoid. In other words, ultimately unimportant in the teaching of things. Now, to some extent, I have to agree with that, because you will note as we read the Torah that, hey, why isn't this bit of information provided? Well, perhaps it's spare for a reason. I see so much incredible brilliance in the text that I have to tell myself anyway, or reassure myself, that things are omitted because they're just not considered ultimately that important in the scheme of things.
Well, I'm going to take exception.
Of course you are.
This has been the story of our lives from the very first time we met. We have always taken different sides on issues, and then are able to argue it from the opposite position. And both of us love that. And this is, I'm going to take another position on that. If everything was explicit in Torah, we would never have the opportunity to discuss it. Everything would be verbatim, and that's it. It would not be open to discussion. The different streams of Judaism, we bring this into our discussion weekly. We would not be doing this if everything was explained to the nth degree. This is one of the problems that any writer has. How much do I put in to the story? But if I do that, how much do I prevent the reader from bringing in his or her own emotions into the story? So it's very, very, and you see the same thing in poetry, and in every culture, a writer has to consider that. The haiku is an excellent example of leaving out a lot so your imagination is at play, but it also brings in a lot in just a few words. Yes, David.
Yeah, two things. I think that in the interest of wanting to keep my marriage a happy one, I'm going to side with Sue on this. I'm going to side with Sue because I think that really kind of agree with her point. But I think most important is the interplay of the two of you is absolutely fascinating to me. And I think to Wendy as well, to listening and watching the two of you going at it like this. It's great.
Thank you. Well, well, that's another story. We're digressing from Torah. and I want to bring us back. But any other comments at this point, or can we read on? And I'll turn it over to Ricky to read what she has from verse 11.
No other comment. Okay. One such day he came into the house to do his work. None of the household being there inside, she caught hold of him by his garment and said, "Lie with me." But he left his garment in her hand and got away and fled outside. When she saw that he had left it in her hand and had fled outside, she called out to her servants and said to them, "Look, he had to bring us a Hebrew to dally with us. This one came to lie with me, but I screamed loud, and when he heard me screaming at the top of my voice, he left his garment with me and got away and fled outside." She kept his garment beside her, using until his master came home. Then she told him the same story, saying, "The Hebrew slave whom you have brought into our house came to me to dally with me. But when I screamed at the top of my voice, he left his garment with me and fled outside."
Okay.
She's
Let's
wicked.
stop at this point and see if there are any comments.
I take back what I said about her. Before.
Why?
Woman's
Why?
liberty is now a conniving bitch.
I don't see that written in here. No.
You're such a truthful lady. Vicky, you're such a
Tell him like I
truthful
see it.
lady.
Like I see it.
Okay, yes, Michael. Michael, did you have your hand up?
No.
No, okay, I'm sorry. I thought it was. David, yes.
Yeah, this is Wendy who wishes to talk.
Oh, okay.
In regards to what happened just then with Joseph and the woman scorned, whenever we go on a cruise, for some reason, I get along better with the staff than I do with the actual people on the cruise. And they've told me rules that they have that they need to be responsible for. For example, if somebody calls them to their cabin to look at something or to help them with something, and it is just a woman, and they go into the cabin and she cries rape or whatever, it's going to be her word against his, and the cruise ship would rather lose a staffer than lose clients. And one of the young men I was talking to said that he knew this was going to happen. And at the time he was supposed to be literally going to her cabin, he went off with some of his other crewmates and stood her up. And she still had her husband say that they found him there, and then he had witnesses as to where he was. So it's a pity Joseph wasn't there with a witness.
That's true. We can apply this today with doctors' offices, lawyers' offices.
Right.
You always have the door open, and you have a nurse with you if you have to close that door, or some other person. Yes, David.
Yeah, I think this woman reminds me of Abigail in The Good Witch, as she plays the opposite, really, of Cassie, and really quite an important character because she does that.
Interesting.
Very good point. Any other comments? Isn't it interesting that she uses the term Hebrew slave in describing Joseph in verse 17? Yes, Suzanne.
In the Dead Sea Scroll Testament, Joseph records that she referred to him as the Hebrew slave quite a bit. So I know it only shows up just the once here, but in his story, he wrote it several times.
Good point. It's a very good point. And now let's just. Oh yes, Gail, please. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I've got Hebrew man. I don't have Hebrew slave.
Oh, okay.
That's
Okay.
I wish we had, either of the rabbis here to help us
I
out.
really do wish they were here. If there are other comments, I'm just going to look back and see if I can figure something out here. 18.
Yeah, I don't have my Hebrew script in front of me. I've only got my English. So.
I can't answer it. I cannot answer it. So I really wish Rabbi Miri or Rabbi Norman were here. Yes, Susan.
Apropos of the use of the word slave, I do not know Hebrew, but I'm wondering if perhaps the word that was used in the text could mean just simply someone in her husband's employ. And maybe that was a reference used to anybody who was subject to the household, not necessarily slave in the literal sense of being a slave. But I would have to ask the rabbis that question.
Well, a slave, if you look at how people were treated, doesn't necessarily relate to toiling in the fields. You could still be a slave, but work in the kitchen. You could still be a slave that did the housekeeping. You could still be a slave that.
I don't know if they used it in that sense.
So I don't know. I do not know, but you could use your slave any way you wanted. It was property. Slave was property. So that's why I just mentioned that.
Have to ask.
We'll have to come back to this with Rabbi Norman when he's with us. And Marcia, yes, you have your hand
The
up.
name that it seems to reference here is Potiphar as her.
Potiphar.
Potiphar, right.
Potiphar.
Does anybody else have that?
Yeah, I have that as well.
Okay.
The story starts with that.
Okay.
Okay,
Then I
that
missed
verse
it.
1, a certain Egyptian Potiphar, courtier of Pharaoh and his chief steward.
Steward. That's not the same as a slave.
Marty.
No, that's Potiphar, who's the steward. Yes.
I just looked up the Hebrew.
Yes.
And it's
Thank
man.
you.
It's man. It's not slave.
Okay.
Ish.
Very good.
Ivri ish.
Ish. It does say ish. Okay.
Interesting.
So it's
David
there.
has his hand.
Yes, David. Wendy. David, you're muted.
I had another take on the use of slaves for whatever your purpose was. If the male of the house took a slave and she got pregnant, then he knew it was his child, even though it was the son of a slave or daughter of a slave. Now, what happens if Potiphar did lay with Joseph and she became pregnant? What would happen to that child?
Very interesting. I do not know, but it depends.
She would immediately have sex with her husband.
Exactly.
Found out she was pregnant and no problem.
That's right. No
Exactly.
DNA at that time.
Officer husbands is Potiphar's.
And we certainly would have had a totally different story. Totally different outcome. Any other comments? Okay, let's move on. Verse 19.
19. When his master heard the story that his wife told him, namely, thus and so your slave did to me, he was furious. So Joseph's master had him put in prison, where the king's prisoners were confined. But even while he was there in prison, the Lord was with Joseph. He extended kindness to him and disposed the chief jailer favorably toward him. The chief jailer put in Joseph's charge all the prisoners who were in that prison, and he was the one to carry out everything that was done there. The chief jailer did not supervise anything that was in Joseph's charge because the Lord was with him, and whatever he did, the Lord made successful.
Okay, let's stop at this point. Yes, Marcia, your hand shot up.
Okay, this is what it says here in my interpretation.
Sure.
The woman managed to anger her husband, but we readers remain in the dark. Does he believe her? He sent Joseph to the prison, but this is the royal prison where accused persons await decisions concerning their fate. She does not punish his wife, which would indicate more clearly that he believed Joseph.
Interesting.
I have yes, I have a commentary to that effect. Yes, in one of my books here. A very good point, Marcia.
Well, mine is a woman's commentary, so maybe it has a different glow to it.
I know you do, but it's in other books,
Good.
which is good. Very good, Marcia. Yes, Sue.
So put in other words, Joseph was sent to a country club prison.
Right.
Yeah, in a way,
Yeah.
in a way, but you know, so he still was recognized possibly of being able to provide some value to the people around him. Yes, Suzanne, please.
I think that Potiphar had his wife's number, and that he believed Joseph, because if he truly believed his wife, he was a powerful enough man that he would have had Joseph executed. But
Very good point.
I agree.
yeah, since he didn't, but he had to do something, so he put him in the king's prison, and I think he felt he dodged a bullet. Now, why
Okay.
he wanted to keep his wife around, I have no idea, but
yeah.
Anyways.
Gail.
Yes. Oh, thank you. Yes, Sue. Gail, please.
There's also a little subtle. There's also a little subtlety here with her remark to her husband. She's blaming her husband. She says, "It's your servant that did this. You know, you brought him into the house. Don't." You know, so she's trying to pass the blame. It's kind of like when Cain and Abel, you know.
That's true. It's another good point. Ricky?
Yeah, I'll read a midrash I have here. The fact that Joseph took him to prison instead of killing him. It's an indication that he did not believe his wife's charge. He explained to Joseph that unless he punished him, people would say that his wife was routinely unfaithful and that Potiphar ignored her behavior and might not even be father of their children.
Yeah.
Another good one.
Yeah, let's see. God decreed that Joseph be in prison for 10 years, 1 year for each of the 10 brothers whom he had slandered to Jacob. Later, 2 more years were added in punishment for placing his trust in the. And okay, that was enough. That was the most interesting part.
Gail?
Yeah, I just realized something. Potiphar, do you know what he did? He was chief of the guards. That's kind of interesting.
Isn't it?
He's chief of the guards, and the guards, of course, are going to be interacting with. I just caught that.
Well, Potiphar obviously recognized a few of Joseph's attributes as a worker. And so it was brought up before about Potiphar not entirely believing his wife. It may be sort of valid because he was more familiar. He could entrust Joseph. Potiphar could trust Joseph, and now in the jail they're trusting Joseph again. Maybe there's
Potiphar is, he may have said something to the guards about how to treat him while he's in prison too.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
That position. Yeah, I just realized that.
Yeah. So I know it's for Wendy. Okay. Whenever David raises his hand and sits back, I know it's Wendy.
Well, as the conversation was going more and more to the head jailer and how well he treated Joseph, it reminded me of like male rituals as they're coming of age with things, and like the cavemen would all go off somewhere as the men were becoming of age. And it hit me. Was the head jailer nice to Joseph because he was gay?
Well,
Who knows?
the thought has to cross one's mind because of the fact that he is so handsome and beautiful, as well as we don't know, but maybe you're right. But it would not fit into the traditional interpretation of the character. But we can raise the question. It's very, very good. Yes, Suzanne.
You know, that's an interesting point, and it might explain why Potiphar didn't have his wife executed, or I don't know what they did with unfaithful women in Egypt, but he himself, you know, they could have had an arrangement if he were gay and just turned his head the other way. I don't know.
Oh, you're talking about if Potiphar were gay?
In a way,
Yeah.
I'm glad the rabbi isn't here today. Any other comments? Okay, why don't we read on? Now we are going to shift into Genesis 40. You know, I before we leave it, Genesis 39. God has seen some promise in Joseph. God is with him. God is a lot of the behavior we're discussing in the jailer and other people is due to God's work. Other people, do we read into this that other people recognized that Joseph had a talent? Did Joseph say that what he was doing and for the good of everyone else was because of his belief in God? I've mentioned before that maybe God's a ham operator, and he looks for the people that have built an antenna and tuned in to the right channel to receive God's messages in the form of dreams. Maybe word has gone out before. I don't know. Susie, it's not our phone. Anyway, I just tossed this out because everyone's putting a lot of faith in Joseph. Before we get to the two dreams that are being singled out. Okay, well, anyway, if not, I will go ahead. Why don't we, David, I'll come back to you. Why don't you read verse 1, Genesis 40, verse 1.
Okay, Genesis chapter 40, here we go. And it came to pass after these things that the butler of the king of Egypt and his baker offended their lord, the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh was wroth against his two officers, against the chief of the butlers, and he put them in ward in the house of the captain of the guard into the prison, the place where Joseph was bound. And the captain of the guard charged Joseph to be with them, and he ministered unto them, and they continued a season in ward. And they dreamed a dream, both of them, each man his dream, in one night, each man according to the interpretation of his dream. the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were bound in the prison. And Joseph came into them in the morning and saw them, and behold, they were sad. And he asked Pharaoh's officers that were with him in the ward of his master's house, saying, Wherefore look ye so sad today? And they said unto him, We have dreamed a dream, and there is none that can interpret it. And Joseph said unto them, Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell it me, I pray you.
Okay, let's stop at this point. Obviously, Freud and Jung would have a field day with these two patients, but sometimes we have to rely on someone who has a different stance. Takes it from a different perspective. Any comments at this point about what David just read?
Is this a question or is this a statement of fact that dreams are from the divine?
Are all dreams from the divine?
Well, this is supposed to be a question, but I'm questioning whether it is supposed to actually be a fact in the Torah.
In the Torah, that's how Joseph interprets them. He's going to be interpreting them that way.
But is it a question for us, is what I'm asking.
Well, let's have a question and discussion about how do we know when we have a dream? Is it from us? Is it from others? Is it from God? How do we know the difference?
It would depend on the dream, wouldn't it?
In what way, Michael? Please expand on that.
It could be religious. It could be something that's reoccurring, a reoccurring dream, something that reoccurs for some reason or another.
Okay. So a recurring dream different from one that just occurs once? Yes, I wish we had Art Bernard with us to help us. Yes, Gail.
Well, could you also say that nightmares are divine? They're dreams.
They are dreams.
Yeah. And I used to have a recurring dream when I was a kid. I had a horrible phobia about white chickens. Long story. And I used to dream that I was falling down an elevator shaft, and at the bottom there were white chickens, flock of them, and I was going to fall into them. I had this dream over and over and over again. I don't think it was anything from God, but it was certainly a nightmare.
Yeah.
Do you have to be asleep to have a dream?
Daydreaming.
Maybe. I'm not going to, I know Ricky has her hand up and then Marcia too.
All right, just real fast. Jiminy Cricket has the answer. A dream is a wish your heart makes when you're fast asleep. So it is from God, a wish your heart makes.
Okay.
According to Jiminy Cricket.
Okay. Yes, Marcia.
Well, you know that sometimes you remember the dream after, and it keeps coming back until it fades. So you don't have to be asleep if you visualize it again. At least I don't.
Yes, David.
I think also there is a profound difference between a regular dream, which I think could be related to the divine, and a true nightmare, which might be one of the most horrifying experiences any human can undergo, is a real nightmare. And that could be very, very frightening. I think there's a difference between the two.
Okay.
A thing of daymares. You know, before you fall asleep or as you're waking up, you have that nightmare. And I'm told that that's much more serious as far as the feeling that's left behind, because you're awake when you're having the nightmare.
Okay.
the one thing that would stand out in my mind is that when you are asleep and you have a dream or a nightmare, it's so frightening real at the moment you're having that. It's such a frightening situation, depending on the dream, that it's kind of remarkable that the mind can visualize that, or that can occur.
That's right. Good point. Very good point too. Yes, Don.
What amazes me about dreams is how fast they are scripted and choreographed. I mean, if we had a writing assignment to make up a scene, you know, a 15-minute scene with 5 people, everybody scripted and everybody in action, I just couldn't do it in regular life. And yet there's a logic to it. You know, it's not crazy random stuff. I mean, it can be crazy, I mean, but it's still, there's something to a dream that we just have not even started to understand. I mean, I don't see how it's even possible for the mind to create something so perfect and rounded and integrated on the fly.
Well, with all those 3 trillion synapses in the brain, we can jump around in a dream state. Okay. Now, so everybody has raised their hand here. Let me call on Gail and Michael. I saw those hands first, and then Ricky, if that's okay with everyone.
I just wanted to comment on a common dream that I think probably you've all had, is the dream of being able to fly, which is probably the most beautiful dream there is. You can soar over woods and, you know, villages. And it's so easy and the best dream in the world. That's the one I wish I could have every night.
Never had that one.
No, neither have I.
Interesting. Yes, Michael.
I also wondered about one's life, dreams associated with one's work, because people spend most of their life working, and do certain types of professions or jobs create certain types of dreams, more or less of them?
Yes, it can happen. Yes, Ricky.
I'm going to tell a story of a dream I had 2 nights in a row that to me was a message from somewhere, something, whatever. I was traveling with a friend. We flew into Spain. We crossed over to North Africa. We blah, 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 blah. I had a dream that we were on time, but we were. And I told my friend the dream, and she said, "Oh, that's because I'm always late. Don't worry about it. We'll be on time." The next night, I had the same dream. We got to the port in North Africa to get the ferry to go back to Spain. And we think we got plenty of time. All of a sudden, we hear the boat's whistle. And it turns out the boat was on Spain time. At North Africa was on standard time, you know. So it was just when daylight savings time changed in Spain, but not in Africa. So our watch was right that we were on time, but we were late to get on the ferry that was in Spain time. But it was such a strong feeling that the minute I heard that boat horn, I knew instantly what was going on, that we were late. And in fact, we were so late that I was the last car up the ferry ramp, and they actually took down the half of the ramp, and I had to walk down the thingy to get off and to get into the passenger side. But to me, I used the word then, precognition, that I knew something was going to happen well before it happened. That was a warning. Now, where did that come from? Angel, God, you know, who knows? Or just my mental acuity, I doubt. I don't think I was smart enough to know that Spain went to daylight savings time and Africa didn't. I mean, I had no sense of that information.
Did
So,
you make the ferry or not, though?
yeah, there were two cart ramps, two tracks that you had to get your wheels in to get your car on. I got the car on, I jumped out of the car, and they'd already removed the ramps. So, I mean, it was like that close. I mean, the minute I hit the ground and got on the boat was moving because it was late. So, but where did that information come from? And I accept that as a message from the universe, whatever you want to call it, the force, but more the universe, giving me information I needed to know. And then the next day in Spain, the airlines were not on daylight savings time, but the town was. So I almost repeated the same story again with catching an air flight. So I was on time, but I was late. Was that very strong warning dream?
I think when there are a number of individuals that have experienced very vivid dreams that are like premonitions.
Yeah, that's like a precognition.
And or precognition.
Yeah.
There's a and there that has been studied. Some people like to call it ESP.
Yeah.
But and some people doubt it. Just as an aside, I was at a convention where one of the lecturers was giving a talk on ESP. And it has many different faces. Many individuals, it depends on whom you've read, things like that. If you ask people, okay, beforehand, you write down on a piece of paper whether you believe in ESP or have had an ESP related situation, and you have them turn it in, and then you ask for a show of hands. How many of you believe in ESP? When you look at the hands that go up in the group, maybe 40% or less will have their hands raised. When you open the pieces of paper, over 90% will have said they have had an experience. They don't want to suffer from social rejection, so they don't raise their hand. And so I think in our minds, we have a lot of, we're only using a small fraction of our brain at any given time. And I wonder if our brain is like another animal within inside of us that is capable of processing data in all different ways, whether we're aware of it or not. And when we're asleep, we're not as aware of what's going on around us. So we're not being distracted. So other things come to the fore in our mind.
I was thinking in terms of Einstein. Maybe mine was a situation of the time-space continuum, that I had been in that future time back to the current time, because of the circle of time and space.
I understand. I know what you're saying.
Yeah, that could be, but I didn't think of it that way at that time.
Who knows? We don't know. Nobody has a definitive answer. Yes, Don.
First of all, I seem to be using 99% of my brain all the time, and it's still not enough. But I did talk about dreams, and I had a dream with a premonition many years ago when I was first learning to fly. And at that time, one other student, myself, was sharing an instructor with this airplane. And I just couldn't wait every single time. I just couldn't wait to do it. And I had a dream one night, and the impact of that dream was don't fly. That it was my turn that day. And so I went out to the airport anyway. I was on the schedule, and I pulled the airplane out of the hangar and pre-flighted it and got it all ready. And then I got in and I got out and I pulled it all the way back into the hangar and packed it up and put it away and told my instructor I wouldn't be flying that day. And so he got the other student, his name was Alan Stone, to come out, and they both went out and a wing came off the plane and they were both killed on that flight.
Wow.
And it has never left me. It was so, it has never left me. So anytime I hear that the dreams don't matter in real life, I just
They do.
have to accept that.
Well, this is the thing that a lot of people have spoken about, and yes, I've known people who run into the same analogous types of dreams, and maybe they are from the universe or from God. I don't know. Yes, Gail.
What makes it, my question though is, and I've heard other people relate similar stories, they got a warning or whatever. Why some people get the warning and others don't? Why didn't the two people who were killed not get, that's what perplexes me. Why you and not somebody else?
Maybe you tuned into the right channel.
Yeah, I was going to say, weren't listening or just poo-pooed it. No, just because you get a warning doesn't mean you listen to the warning.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's very true. And more often than not, we don't, unfortunately. Anyway, any other comments about this? I miss Arthur Bernard when we're discussing dreams. He was an expert on dream interpretation. And he actually would turn the tables on everyone. He would say, well, what do you think your dream meant? So it was good. Anyway, any other comments?
Hi, this is Grace.
Okay, thanks, Grace. Well,
I've had my hand raised for a little while, and
I'm sorry.
Determined.
I'm sorry. I
Don't
thought you were
worry.
saying you like a high five for a second. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Grace.
All right. The suggestion here that I am hearing and learning, and I think it's very Kabbalistic that, even the Torah speaks of this. And because it's like a premonition, I knew my grandmother was with me in the moment of her passing, right? I knew it. And I've shared this with you all before. I knew it in my heart of hearts. And it was, very frightening. I was in the shower and nobody was home. And I knew this. And I had my Rottweiler there. And, even he was shook. And the room became very chilled, which is not unusual. I get out of the shower, the room's kind of cold, not a big deal. So, but this slamming of the door, and all the doors in my house in my master bedroom were locked. And I heard this prominent sound. And that's when I contacted my mother, and they were, over 1,000 miles away from where I was. And I was always the one that my grandmother was always concerned about. And when my mom got back to the nursing facility, because she had moved from, a high-rise hotel, well cared for, into this facility, had been there for a short while. And my mother said, well, I was just with her last night. I wasn't planning to go over there today. And as soon as that happened, I said, you need to go over there and check on her. She just visited me. And there's always been that sense of prediction in me with my premonitions and dreams. It's like when my sister passed. I didn't, another friend of mine, her husband passed. I felt something, I felt something, and I wasn't, sometimes I can't interpret what I'm feeling or what has been laid into me through a spirit unknown to me, other than I think of that as God. I sincerely, really, and truly do, because it comes to me. And I don't know what to do with that. And it scares the crap out of me sometimes, but it's like, it's just, what do I do with it? Is it to be used for my protection, my health, my integrity? I do not know. So
Yep.
I thought that was worth sharing. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Excuse me. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Did you want to say? Oh, okay. And any other comments about this? Yes, I used to discuss this subject with Art Bernard, and he well, I'll tell you one thing, and Sue can relate to this because I scared the living daylights out of her. One time I wake up in the middle of the night, bolt out of bed and scream out, "It's melioidosis." And Sue said, "What the heck is going on? Are you okay?" I was dreaming about a very difficult case. And everybody thought she had TB, and I said no. And in my dream, had totally different diagnosis, which turned out to be the correct diagnosis. And other people. So Grace, I agree with you. One night I had a horrible dream that Sue is in a very bad accident. The next day, the exact circumstances occurred, but fortunately, a policeman drove her up to the house, and I said I knew what had happened, and I was able to even describe the color of the truck, and who was in the car with her, and everything else. And I hadn't seen her all day. I didn't know her schedule. And so I do think that everybody has it. What is it? Maybe it's that we have to tune into the right station on our ham receiver. And somehow it's out there. I don't know what it is, but maybe we have to have that the proper antenna. Maybe, but we have to have a good tuner so that we can receive these. I just don't know. Yes, David.
Your story is fascinating. I would like to expand on it just briefly and make the comment that these premonitions do not necessarily have to be for bad things. They can be for good things, because I've had one premonition in my life that I was going to be doing something interesting with regard to comets, and I couldn't get it out of my mind. I could never get it out of my mind. Even when I started to work with the shoemakers, couldn't get it out of my mind. My mom came to visit, and her advice was, in front of Jean and Carolyn, don't give up your day job. And anyway, she stopped saying that after we discovered Comet Shoemaker River 9. She stopped saying that, changed her tune. But premonitions can be good as well as bad.
Sure. Yes. Sure they can. Yeah, Michael, you had your, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Michael.
Is that ESP, extrasensory perception? Is that also known as having a sixth sense of something?
Yes.
Yes, I think so.
But I can't, it has all kinds of names. Nobody knows for sure. No, it's very vague because people can only explain that they've had those experiences, but there were no ways of measuring those experiences.
No way to prove them,
That's right.
to provide proof.
Exactly.
I know something to be true. I absolutely know it, but I cannot prove it.
Yeah, this can happen. This can happen. And so as we go through our lives, is this something that we're supposed to recall dreams that we've had? Are we supposed to talk to people about them? Are we supposed to enter into discussions with them? I know this is sort of turning into a sermon, but it is it is something that this sparks. And what is our responsibility when you have these dreams? What is our responsibility with this?
I don't think you have a responsibility.
Well, I don't know. If we read this, there's some responsibility that goes with it in our Torah reading. Yes, David, I think you're raising your hand for Wendy again.
Oh, are we muted?
No.
No.
Yes, he is. You know, when I was in college, I had a professor that said, the answer to a lot of questions is, it all depends. You know, so depending on your dream, it may be very important. It may just be important to you. Here's a quickie fun one. When I was a girl, we used to go out to a lake every Labor Day, and my dad was teaching us how to water ski. And for love or money, I could not get up on a slalom on the one ski. I couldn't do it, because I was doing it the way they told me. And that night, I dreamt something different, just Marty, just like you did with the problem. I dreamt a different way to get up. And the next day I said, Daddy, please, please, please give me one more try. And lo and behold, I did it the way I dreamt it. And I got up on the ski. Now, this is nothing that I needed to say, hey, I taught myself, because it was something that was sticking around in your brain. But if you find something that sounds like it really could be super important, even if it's the same kind of learning thing, but you're discussing something with a group, like, you know, diagnosing the disease, then it is important to say eureka. And I've now discovered that, what is it, I found it, right. So it all depends on what your dream is.
Yeah.
That's true.
That was the point I was going to make on your first dream. I think all of us have had times when just before we fall asleep, we have an insight into something. And I firmly believe it's because the day is leaving us. And, you know, we've cleared out all the clutter and the noise and the chaos of the day, that things that our brain, that we've been working on, you know, consciously or unconsciously, have room then to come out. And that solution to the medical problem is a classic example. I can't tell you how many times I do a lot of writing, and I'll just as I'm falling asleep, get the word that I want or the thought that I want, because the chaos of the day is leaving me.
Yeah.
And what's been mulling can gel. So was that a dream, or was that last second before you fell asleep while still conscious? Exactly.
Yes, Michael, you've been so patient with us. Thank you.
No, that's okay. You mentioned responsibility. Do you have a responsibility to tell or to share it? What about, is it depending on the dream, is it the responsibility of the person who you are telling it to believe you?
Good point.
Good point. Because that is going to be the topic of our discussion as we go into the story that we're about to read, you know, go into more detail about this. One believes, some people believe the story and some people do not. And some say, oh, it's chance. So, I know of other people too, not just in our group, but in other people who have avoided something mysterious just comes along and says to them, don't drive in that direction,
Right.
go somewhere else. And they read in the paper the next day there was a huge accident where they would have been. I can't explain these things, but maybe it's the little ham operator inside of us that has to be able to tune in to the right channel so we receive this. Let me just finish that. Louis Pasteur said it best. Chance favors the prepared mind. Okay, you can discuss that from in many different ways. Sue.
I have to wonder as I'm listening to your experiences and remembering some of mine about dreams. Compare any one of us now to people who lived in times where there were no electronics, not a whole lot of distraction other than the entertainment you made for yourself with the simplest of tools. It occurs to me that there are parts of your brain or your senses that were more in tune with what was going on around you than perhaps we are today. There are senses that opened up because, for instance, when it was sundown, if you didn't have fire, that was the end of your light for the day. And you used your other senses, your sense of sound, and actually even your sense of awareness of other animal life around you. Today, I sense there's a sort of blight on the human spirit. We're blind to certain things, not by choice. I think it's because of how much we've evolved with convenience items, with electronics and distractions. I personally know people who are very intelligent innately, but who have to have constant stimulation of some kind. It's almost as if they do not wish to participate in things out there. They're trying to distance themselves or remove themselves. And it's a form of self-hypnosis in a way, to detach. And so I have to wonder if all of the advances we now have in a sense blighted our other senses or made us less aware.
Thank you. Yes, Gail.
Now, this is why meditation is such a wonderful thing.
Yes.
Because you do not attach to anything. You leave yourself wide open to whatever. And some of the experiences that you can have are beyond belief. Your connection to everything becomes very apparent if you're really, really letting go. And that is the most blissful feeling in the world. It's like when you see a beautiful scene of nature out there and you're totally connected. You're just part of the scene.
Yep.
That's what Sue is talking about, Yeah.
That is.
Yes.
We're rapidly approaching our time limit. We're going to go over. I'm going to let Don have the final word.
You're muted, Don.
Don, you're muted.
Yeah, okay. I don't think I can live up to that. But just to your point, Marty, about tuning in, having an antenna, a little side project for many years has been in antennas in ancient history. And one of the most basic pieces of jewelry going back to copper age, bronze, before the Bronze Age, is the torque, T-O-R-C. And it's found throughout. The Celts were really big on torques, and it's just twisted coil of wire with bowls on the end and an air gap between them. That is the simplest radio tuning device.
That's right.
And, it's an oscillating circuit, and it goes back centuries and centuries into, to Sumerians, I think, had torques. So it's just a little private project but I'm convinced that people had a sense that they could tune in
Yeah.
to the universe.
Interesting.
And I mean, even now, the same design is used in golf bracelets. It's exactly the same thing. So, you know, if nothing else, you can knock a couple of points off your score. Anyway, that wasn't important enough to use up the last couple.
It's okay. That's another worthwhile.
Very interesting.
Very, very good discussion, everyone. I really think that we've really, this could go on for hours.
I want to remind people about come over and get some oranges.
Okay. Thank you, Ricky. And Ruth Ann, any other announcements you want to make? Or
No, just remember that there's no Torah studies next week because we'll have Shabbat services. And if you're saying any prayers this coming week, pray that the internet doesn't crash again at the temple.
Yes.
Yeah, that can
Yeah.
happen.
That's what happened yesterday.
Yes.
And is Rabbi
boy.
doing his special Torah study this Monday?
No, not this Monday, the following Monday, the 12th.
Okay.
This is a quiet week. The following week is a very busy week.
Okay.
Well, have a good, healthy
Everyone,
week, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
And
Shalom.
as Leonard Nimoy would say, okay, may you live long and prosper.
Yes.
Shabbat shalom. Thank you.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat
Hey,
Shalom.
live long and stay healthy.
Shalom.
That is
Yes.
right.